council here.
And Chair Cooper, we were planning to hear from Lehigh tonight, so I just texted them to make sure that they're on their way.
Okay. Did they get a panelist link, do you think, or do they have the public?
Great question. I do not know. I asked that in the text.
Okay, cool.
I didn't send a panelist link to anyone, so if you just let me know their names, I can promote them at the appropriate time in the agenda.
Steve Strickland is in the attendees, and Steve is with Interfaith of the Low Income Housing Institute.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Keith. Thanks, Kelly.
Okay. Thank you. So it looks like everyone here has audio, so I think we're ready to get going. So let's jump right in. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Regional Housing Council meeting for August 25th. Let's go ahead and do a round of introductions for the record. And so I'll start in Yelm with Mayor Foster.
Hey, thanks. You said it all. J.W. Foster, Yelm.
Do you want to tell everyone what you were telling us before the meeting?
Sure. Since I only have a few months left to serve my community in this fashion, I've asked Council Member Holly Smith if she would be interested in serving on the Regional Housing Council, and she has accepted that. So she's appointed to the position right now, but looking into my crystal ball, it would be unlikely for her to lose the general election. So she'll be on the council for the next 4 years. And I think she's got the right head, experience, and personality to be a good fit with this team.
Great. And then we know that after you're done being mayor, you'll be doing crystal ball readings for politicians all over the Pacific Northwest.
You know, the thing is, you can't guess very well in Yelm. This last primary, we had two candidates tie, and it came down to a hand recount, and the victor came out 1 vote ahead. So she'll be facing off against her, well, against Holly actually, for the general. But that's the way it goes in Yelm. I won my mayor position by 14 votes.
Right.
They call me landslide.
Every vote matters. That's right. Let's always remind everyone of that because it's important. Thank you.
And the 1 vote that she won by was a corrected ballot.
Really?
Oh, I hadn't heard that. Wow.
Where
Okay.
they called the person up and said, we can't, you know, your signature or something was wrong with it. And they called the person, they came in and corrected the ballot. And so they could say they were the one who made the decision. Otherwise, it would have come down to a coin flip. Does anybody know the history of that? Of the only election that was that was won by a coin flip in Thurston County? Oh, it happened in Tenino a bunch of years ago. I think for a council.
No, I do remember that now. Huh.
Yeah.
Hearing about it. Wow.
Well, that was a long way of me just introducing myself. Sorry, Chair.
Well, thank you. No worries. And it's a good reinforcement to make sure your ballot got brought into, you know, accepted. Like follow up on the Secretary of State's website and make sure your ballot was actually part of the count. So thank you for that, Mayor Foster.
You're welcome.
So Michael in Tumwater.
Thanks, Councilmember Cooper. Michael Althauser, representing Tumwater City Council. I believe I'm also joined by Councilmember and Mayor Pro Tem Joan Cathy, as well as Brad Medrud from our Planning Department.
Okay, sorry, I was just looking because I don't see Joan, but if you're expecting her, that's good enough.
She was on a second ago and dropped off, so I think she was just having she just
comes.
joined, so she
Okay.
should be back.
Great, perfect, thank you. So let's go to Carolyn and Lacey.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Cox, Lacey's representative to this group, and I'm joined with my alternate today is Councilmember Lenny Greenstein, and we are it for Lacey today.
Great, thank you. Let's go to Thurston County.
Wait.
Oh yeah, you got a guy here too.
Well, we've got Kelly Adams here. Kelly, sorry.
Thank you, Kelly, for keeping us wrangled and moving forward. We appreciate it. And then so Thurston County, I'm going to go to Carolina.
Hi, I'm in the car today. So Carolina Mejia for Thurston County Commissioner. And today we're joined by, I saw Jacinda Stelgis and our County Manager Ramiro Chavez. I hope
Yes, and
that's
I'll
it.
express regrets for Tom and Keely. Keely's out on vacation and Tom is delivering a daughter to college. So.
Oh,
Anything else from Thurston County? I think that's it. Thank you, Carolina. And then from Olympia, we have myself, Jim Cooper, my colleague on the council, Danny Madrone, Assistant City Manager, Keith Staley, Housing Home Fund Manager, Carrie Retland, and I think that's it. So thank you. And did I miss anyone in the introductions? Okay, great. So is everyone okay with the agenda as it stands? Okay, hearing nothing, we have an agenda, and that takes us to public comment. And I have one person signed up, Linnea Comstock. Kelly, can you promote Linnea so we can hear their comments? And Linnea, I don't have a time. I'm not going to use a timer, but if you could keep it to about 2 minutes, that would be wonderful. You can unmute yourself now, Linnea. I see you promoted, Linnea, but I also see another Linnea Comstock in the attendees. So I'm not sure if that is there two?
I'm
Maybe.
promoting them both, sir.
Okay,
I'm trying to, can you hear me?
I hear you. Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
I'm not sure if you can see me, but I was having a poor connection with my laptop. So I tried to join with my phone.
Now
So
I can
have-
see you.
Yes, I have a couple comments before I made a prepared comment, but I wanted to say that I called Keely and spoke with her twice last week to gather data and to get to know the ropes a little bit better about this program. And I really wanted to commend her for her kindness and her interpersonal skills. She's amazing, really amazing. And so I want to thank her for that. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and make some personal a formal statement, but it's a personal comment. Good afternoon, Regional Housing Council. My name is Linnea Comstock. I live in the city of Olympia, own a medically related business in the city of Olympia, and a building in which the business is located. At your last meeting, or at your meeting last month, your council voted to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners, quote, to pursue every funding opportunity at our disposal up to and including a countywide home fund in order to fund permanent supportive housing and other housing needs. I'm encouraging those of you that live in Lacey, Tumwater, and unincorporated Thurston County, and that would include Yelm and Tenino and Bucota, to put a pause on the recommendation. Why? I'm wondering if your council has performed an after-action review or an ongoing review of the One Community Plan in the city of Olympia. If you treat that project in Olympia as a pilot project before you move forward countywide, I'm familiar with the pilot project process. I would think that that would be something that you would want to consider. What's going well with the One Community Plan and what could be done better with the One Community Plan? For me as a small business owner and small property owner and resident, the current plan has increased danger and reduced safety directly for me and my staff, patients, and businesses, surrounding businesses. We've seen a large uptick in crimes being committed, including burglary, stolen property, which is either stored on private property, such as a radiator, which was found in the bushes on the side of our building, or other stolen property was found and picked up from a crawl space 2 buildings down from us 2 Fridays ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago. Trespassing. And there have been at least 3 incidents that I know of that I can document, one of them happening to me where there have been actual personal threats made to people who work in this business park. Clearly something is wrong. So before you take action to expand Olympia's plan countywide, please reconsider the impacts to you and your local community and take action to build accountability into your current plan, as that's the one piece that I think that doesn't seem to be present, dealing with crime and that kind of thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Linnea, and we all appreciate your comment and echo your sentiment about Keely. She is a phenomenal human being and great to have on the team. So, and any responses or comments about public comment? Okay, thank you very much. So that takes us to an approval of our July minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any amendments, questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, so that takes us to future planning with the Housing Action Team. And Kelly, I'm going to need the ability to share my screen if you don't already have that power shared.
Chair Cooper, you should have that power.
Okay. Hang on, apparently I wasn't ready. Give me one sec. Okay, so when the leadership planning team met last week, we met with the essentially the executive committee of the Housing Action Team, which included all of the subcommittee chairs. And so there were about 5 extra folks on there. And we talked quite a bit about the proposal to have a retreat together and talk about where our relationship lies and what it looks like into the future. And so you can see on this slide that Keely made for me on her way to the airport, kind of what we're working with in as far as subcommittees. And I think this is something for me that was pretty significant when we say we want to meet with the Housing Action Team and partner and figure out what that looks like into the future. There's a lot of folks and a lot of work happening in several different buckets. And so that was the first thing that I think is really important for us to understand as we go into this conversation. And as well, there's, you know, those groups are in different places around this conversation, or even have different levels of interactions with Thurston Thrives, who they currently fall under. But the discussion with those chair people was really positive. They are interested in a conversation with us, whatever that looks like. It feels natural that we would have a stronger and more formal relationship between the Housing Action Team and the Thurston Thrives group, and the Regional Housing Council. I'm sorry, I'm jumbling all the names now. They also, we also talked about in that retreat planning, there's quite a few folks, and I'll just quote Anna Schlecht. We're gonna have a family reunion with all the cousins coming together, and we should make sure that we spend a little bit of time being deliberate about what we're gonna do and where we're gonna meet and when we're gonna meet. And so we all would like to recommend back to you that we actually postpone having the in-person retreat this fall until after the first of the year. And that's for 2 reasons. One, so that members of the Regional Housing Council can go and meet with all of those committees individually prior to coming together and have a discussion and talk about their needs and wants and what we're up to, so that we aren't doing all 101 in the beginning of the retreat. And that will give us an opportunity to get a better understanding of where everyone's coming from before we meet in the same room for a retreat. And so we would have some pre-canned questions, if you will, that we would bring with that. So it's a discussion and we're harvesting a little bit of information. And then we would use that to then plan for a retreat together with those chairs of those subgroups for sometime after the first of the year. So if that works for you all, let me stop sharing my screen somehow. Where did that go? I don't know. Somebody took me out. Good. Thank you, Kelly. Oh, now, hang on. So please speak up if you're on board with that, or if you have another thought. Now I can see my Zoom again. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks. Can you talk a little bit more about kind of the expectations of having those conversations between now and the first of the year? Like, should we individually be reaching out to those different organizations? Should we just be attending those meetings? Like, what do you sort of envision for the best way for us to interact with those groups so they aren't bombarded by individual requests from each of us to, get a briefing or a sit down in the meantime?
Yeah, so what Keely, when she gets back, she'll help us schedule to come to their existing meetings, primarily Carolina and I, as we're available, and then we'll reach out if we need backup, is kind of how we talked about it. But happy to, invite the whole council if you want to join any of those once we get the schedule mapped out. I don't have the dates for their meetings yet.
Yeah, if that could be sent around to members. I know personally I would find that helpful. I serve on Thurston Thrive's coordinating council, but think it would still be helpful to attend some of those meetings just so that I can kind of glean additional context for when we do have the conversation at the beginning of the new year.
Yeah, that's great. I'll make sure once we get that worked out that Keely invites all of us. And then I'm glad you said coordinating council, because that was another conversation that a couple of the subcommittee chairs brought up is, we want to have an amiable relationship no matter what happens with Thurston Thrives, because a lot of these partner organizations will still have work in Thurston Thrives even if the hat moves away. And so we talked about Carolina and I going to a coordinating council meeting as well.
Great.
So the conversation in regards to that, sorry, do you mind if I just jump in?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So the conversation with that was we were planning to meet with the executive committee for sorry,
You're good.
she's throwing a tantrum. Having a meeting with Thurston Thrive's executive committee and then the Regional Housing Council executive committee to see how we can come in an agreement and really keep have more of a partnership with them instead of just trying to keep that amicable relationship between these two organizations.
Yes, good clarification, Carolina. Just executive to executive for right now. Any other comments on that? Okay, you're all happy and okay with that approach, or you're not dissenting anyway?
Sorry, one more question. So are we just pushing this portion of the conversation to the new year, or pushing the entire concept of the retreat to the new year? Like, are we still going to hold a fall retreat? Or are we pushing the whole thing?
So push the whole retreat concept to the new year, but while we do this sub work and get around and have some conversations.
Okay.
And then also I might have said two reasons and not ever stated the second one. So I apologize if I did already, but because of COVID and the Delta variant, it just makes sense to kind of wait a minute before we try to gather what is a lot more people than we see on the screen right here.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay, great. So we will keep moving forward with that plan, and I'll make sure that the council members all get invited to those subcommittees once we get working on calendaring. I'm trying to think. Jacinda, can you kind of put a note on Keely's desk for me so she sees that when she gets back, or send her a prompt? Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Okay, so that takes us to the 2828 Martin Way phase 2 presentation. And so I think I'm gonna turn it over to Carrie Retland, who's going to give us kind of the background of this conversation. I know it's been to the funding committee and we have some materials in our packet. So if you didn't see that later in the packet, probably a good time to pull it up, but Carrie might even share some stuff with us. So Carrie, take it away, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Cooper. Members of the Regional Housing Council, I'm Carrie Retland. I'm a Home Fund Manager at City of Olympia, and I prepared a staff report for you that is in your packet, but I'll hit some high points on that prior to turning the conversation over to Stephen with Lehigh to talk a little bit more about the project and the request before you tonight. So as Chair Cooper mentioned, the funding work group discussed a few weeks back at their August 9th meeting and made a recommendation that you all identify funds to address a current funding gap with the 2828 Martin Way Phase 2 project, which is now known as Unity Commons. That project is currently on course to submit application for both state housing trust fund dollars and federal tax credits this September 15. To date, that project has already gotten some local support from Olympia Home Fund and from you all through the funding round earlier this year. But for reasons that are expressed in some detail from the Lehigh letter, there are funding gaps because of some new energy code and other COVID impacts related to construction costs that Stephen will talk a bit about. But the recommendation thus far is to try and help use both pooled supportive and affordable housing funds and also local funds where available in order to keep the project moving forward, since this would add 63 more units of affordable and supportive housing to the existing 65 plus the 60 shelter beds at the Martin Way facility. So again, this is the second phase of that project. Some of the numbers are similar, so it's easy to get confusing, but I just want to make sure that you all know that, or that we highlight this is the second phase. Phase 1 is under construction and will lease up later this winter. Stephen, I wanted to turn it over to Stephen Strickland with Lehigh and the Interfaith Partnership to share more information and take questions if you have questions about their letter that you received. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, Carrie. And thank you all for taking the time and for hearing our request. We just want to say thank you to all the staff members and folks who've worked with us on Phase 1, which is going to be opening in December, which is really exciting. Like Carrie said, it's going to contain 65 affordable housing units as well as 60 shelter beds operated by Interfaith Works. And then this funding request, as Carrie said, is for Phase 2, which is going to be 64 permanent supportive housing units, 40 studio and 24 one-bedroom units. And we're also including some services space. So there'll be a case management office, a medical office, and a resident lounge area, which will be a really great for our partnership with Interfaith and having a substantial services space for folks to be indoors and safe. So our funding request, and Carrie prepared some great materials. It's overall, it's 1.7 million. The project, just for perspective, is the total development cost to develop the project is 23 million. The reason why we're having to ask for Phase 2 and not for Phase 1 is, there've been a number of reasons. The main one being the pandemic has really hit construction costs hard, as I'm sure a lot of you have bought wood recently have seen. It just, the price of wood drastically increased. The price of a lot of other materials have increased due to supply chain issues. And even as wood has come down, other materials like steel are increasing in prices due to supply chain issues. So that overall had a major impact on our budget that has been changing since this project first kind of started developing as we were doing Phase 1. The other main kind of related increase is just in general inflation. As you know, general inflation is raised prices on everything. And so that's also increases the construction cost. And then we're also privy now to an updated state energy code. So phase one was under an older energy code and also under an older sustainability standard provided by the Department of Commerce. So this building, although more expensive per square foot, is going to be a better building that is more sustainable in the long term and better for the earth now. And then the additional thing is we're including some additional service space compared to phase one because just of the general population and trying to have more space for folks due to the pandemic. We've had a lot more success in our buildings. I have a little more space for people to be spaced out, especially in kind of congregate areas. So those are kind of the main reasons for the cost increase. I just want to give a quick overview of that, and then I'll take any questions. But on our end, just for a summary of what Lehi's done, we've tried to cut cost obviously as much as we can without sacrificing any of the building quality. We pride ourselves on our design quality and construction quality and don't want to build something that will require more funding later down the road. We want something that's going to be maintained for a 40-year term and look good for that period. And we've also applied for additional funding from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines to try to help fill that gap. So overall, as I stated, the gap is 1.7 million, and we'd really appreciate your help and support in filling that. It's really important to the project because we're going to be applying for state housing trust funds in September, and also for low-income housing tax credits from the State Housing Finance Commission in November. So the investment that the city and county put in will leverage about $20 million in other funds from other public and private funders. So it really helps our project to be more competitive for those funds and to bring those funds to Olympia. So thank you for taking the time, and we're happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Okay, Lenny, go ahead.
This is probably more for Carrie, I would think, but can $1,406 be used for this?
Yes, yes, and that's the recommendation of the funding work group as well as staff, is that we use the pooled 1406 funds, and if jurisdictions have 1406 funds from previous years, that we also use those. The other thing that I included in the staff recommendation is a motion that tracks with that suggestion. In the event that, let's say based on, like, as Stephen said, if costs for construction were to come down, that these be the last dollars awarded and drawn for the project. That way, unlike some of the capital dollars in the project, if these aren't needed for construction, we could then use these dollars for operations at this location or another project potentially, because 1406 has that flexibility.
Excellent.
Good question. Romero?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I did have the chance to review the letter, and in the statements made today is a gap in funding of 1.7 million. What is just a matter of semantics, but to me the gap is the last mile until we can get to the project to fully funded. But as you stated today, Stephen, there is a lot of other elements that needs to take place in order for you to have the full funding. They're still waiting for additional applications to the federal government. They're still having the response from the bank to have the rest of the funding. So I don't think there's really a gap request, because at least from my point of view, a gap request is getting to the last mile. I appreciate Carrie to have a little bit of a flexibility, because my concern is that $1,406 right now is going to be tied up $1.7 million until we can see the results of the funding request that you're going through the process, which is, I don't know how long it's going to take. So I'm not necessarily against the project. Obviously, this is a valuable project. I'm just concerned about the financial plan that has been presented today.
Thank you, Romero. What are
No,
the
I'm good.
timelines for those? If I can just pull a question out of Romero's comments for those applications and bank decisions.
Yeah, so it's fully a public funder decision. So the two steps are there's state housing trust funds, which are the application cycle's annual. And it's the same for the State Housing Finance Commission's tax credit funding. So the Housing Trust Fund application goes in a couple weeks in September 15th. They make a decision by just basically by Christmas. And then we apply for the tax credits in November, and they make a decision in conjunction with the state and in discussion with the state by Christmas as well. So this kind of the reason we call it a gap request is because the funding for those is set by formula basically. So we know what those amounts will be and they can't really change. And so we know that we're at the end of the day, we're going to have this amount remaining that we're going to need to fill either via local funding or some other mechanism. So we're trying to come in now to ask so that we maintain full competitiveness for those funds, for state funds. And then generally, if you're awarded the state funds, because there wouldn't be other projects that have the local funding that are from this area, you would then receive the tax credits. And we applied for the county pipeline to be the single tax credit project for 2022. The 2021 project fell through from a different provider, and so we moved this project to come in 2021. So we're in the county's pipeline as the project for this year. So we're confident if we can show that we're fully funded, that we would be really competitive for the state and the tax credit funding.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go to Scott and then Michael.
Thanks. I just want to make sure I understand the scope correctly. So you mentioned phase one, phase two. Phase one is interfaith, obviously. Are you including the 23 million as a joint project? Or are you just saying there's a $23 million project for these 64 units in phase two?
So the phase one project, which is 65 Lehigh units and the interfaith shelter that includes 60 beds, that's a $20 million project that's fully funded and going to be done in December. It doesn't need any money. Phase two is still, in this funding stage. We would start construction if we were fully funded by Christmas, by late 2022, and then be done hopefully by Christmas of what would that be, 2023. So they're separate financially.
Okay, so just for clarity, when you said the $23 million that we're talking about this project, you're talking about phase two only.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And so even then, I guess with inflationary price, we've been talking about per unit cost, that's probably be closer to $360,000 a unit.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I had.
And I'll just lift one thing up that I caught in conversations with Carrie is contractors are asking for higher contingencies because of the unknown cost of supplies. And so that's, besides everything that has been said, a pretty significant piece of this. So Michael, and then Keith.
Yeah, I guess like what I'm sort of having trouble wrapping my head around is sort of the chicken and the egg in terms of timing. Like it sort of seems like you have to be fully funded in order to be competitive for the housing trust fund. But if you don't get the housing trust fund, then the gap or whatever is much, much larger than 1.7 million. So is it accurate that if all things, like if you were to get the full amount that you're eligible for housing trust fund from state resources, that the delta we're talking about is still 1.7 despite potentially getting those resources?
Yes.
Okay. And in terms of timing, like the federal government seems pretty poised to potentially pass a large infusion of budgetary dollars, that a large chunk of those is going to be for affordable housing. If that happens in the next month or two, like what does timing look like for this kind of thing? Because if we are talking about $1,406, it'll take a while for us to accrue those unless the ask is to bond them. So how does timing work here? Like if we don't take action tonight, does that mean the project is offline, or like what does timing look like for the future?
From my perspective, I think the importance of you all taking action tonight and this month is that puts Lehigh in position to have award letters from us committing funds so that they have more local funding when they're competing against other local projects in Bellingham or Tacoma or Spokane. So we'll have more local funding in our project that'll make our Thurston County project more competitive. And then to answer your question about accrual of funds, our recommendation is that we're using the pooled 2021 funds. Lehigh, because they need to win other awards before they can draw on these dollars, they wouldn't begin drawing on this until probably, until they break ground after they have their full funding stack and have closed on their tax credits. So that wouldn't be until, stop me if I'm wrong, Steve, until at least 2022. Yeah.
Okay. Keith and then Romero.
I just hope that the committee will consider that this project represents the shortest distance between here and being under construction for new supportive housing units in our county. We own the property. We have the developer. They are prepared to move forward with an application for Housing Finance Commission and for tax credits. There's no other entity in the county that's prepared to do that. So yes, it will tie up some of our funds going forward, but there isn't another entity at this moment that's prepared to move forward with this sort of facility and also prepared to operate the facility going forward. So again, I encourage you to move forward with this to make this project whole, and we obviously will continue to monitor this situation as we go forward and decisions are made regarding their funding stack. So, thank you.
So Romero, Scott, then Michael.
Thank you. As a matter of clarification, if the suggestion is to use 1406, I believe we at the region level we generate on a yearly basis close to 850,000, 900,000. So the request will be for all the regional allocation for 2021 and 2022. It's not going to be for a single year. So it's a 2-year allocation if it's 1406.
Well, let me just say that I know Olympia still has their 2020 money, and so we'll work to see if we can bring that to the table. I don't think that'll be a huge lift. And I believe that we held back almost $1 million in our last round of allocations. So it would probably be likely with all of the moving parts of funds, especially to Michael's point, if the federal money comes in that could supersede or be easier to faster to use than something like this. So those are just numbers that are in my head. I want to make sure I keep facilitating the conversation. So Scott and then Michael.
So maybe just for clarity, I think what I heard, and maybe it was stated, but just for clarity, did it sound like, let's assume that HRC does want to go forward with this project, those funds would be contingent upon getting those state dollars. So if the state dollars did not go to fruition, then those dollars would be returned back to HRC?
Yes.
Okay. And then second, and I don't know, maybe that's going to be talked about later tonight. I know Keely was working on, as you know, Lake City Council talked about, how do we come up with the gap for permanent supportive housing? And so has this project been identified to fill that gap or identify that gap?
Yes, this project is part of that, part of the puzzle that's helping us fill our supportive housing gap.
And the update I can give on that is that Keely and Tom, I think, are taking a plan based on our conversations for the extra 150 units of permanent supportive to the commission in the next couple of weeks. I had a date in my head, but I can't remember what day Tom told me, so. Other questions or comments? Michael, sorry, I forgot. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that our 2020 allocation for 1406 has been spent, and there's a little bit left in there that's dedicated. If we wanted to draw some funds from another source, I think we could cobble together a small amount of funds to contribute to that. But realistically and candidly, it would be a drop in the bucket for 1.7 million. I'm talking less than probably like maybe like $75,000 or something. But we could, I mean, our 1406 is only about $50,000 a year. Ours is relatively small.
Okay, thanks for that. And then Lacey, have you spent your 2020 1406?
I'll turn to Scott on that.
So we did pledge an allocation to Homes First project to house minors, but that project has not gone off the ground yet. So there may be a room for discussion on that project.
Okay, cool. Okay, Carolyn, you had your hand up.
And then, yeah, I just want to address what Keith was saying about, we have set this goal of standing up 150 units of permanent supportive housing, and this is the bright star. This is the one thing that we really can do and be sure that it's going to happen. So it's going to be a lift that we all need to do, but I think it makes a whole lot of sense, and strongly encourage everybody to get behind it.
Okay. And so I see there's a motion here, and I would say I agree. I mean, a letter now and kind of finalizing the exact funding formula after contracts are signed and in, and we see what gap we would fill makes sense to me, because primarily because of the leveraging piece. Like we have this in our pipeline. We have to get these units built, and our community has told, I think all of our communities have told us that housing it should be our highest priority. And so with that, Carolyn, do you have it in front of you, or Michael, or JW, or do you want me to read it? I'll just read it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for a motion to approve that staff draft a conditional award letter addressing the funding gap for 2828 Martin Way Phase 2. Funds should include pooled, supportive, and affordable housing funds 1406. The RHC also recommends that Olympia, Lacey, and Tumwater each contribute 1406 ARPA or other funds to help address this gap and ensure a highly competitive regional project. The conditional award letter must stipulate that these funds will be drawn after Olympia Home Fund, State Housing Trust Fund, other Thurston County, and tax credit funds are exhausted.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it, but I do want to make a comment before we vote.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the amount of funds that we can contribute will be relatively modest, like I described earlier. But yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that on the record before we vote for it.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that the technical team in the background will watch these steps happen over the course of this year and kind of bring the ask at the levels that we can afford to each community. So Carrie, is that an okay reflection of the work that the technical team will do?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Scott, go ahead. And then Romero.
Looking at Romero for remembering, just maybe a logistical issue, because we're using $1406, do we not need the endorsement of each legislative body? I mean, it seems like a good project, but I think is that a step we need to go through because of that specific fund that we're actually discussing?
Yes. So from the county's point of view, we're committed to put all the $1406 to a regional project. It seems to me this just fits the mold to that intent of the Board of County Commissioners. But that is the key point that I was raising my head. So thank you, Scott. I think there is another step. The local jurisdictions need to affirm this recommendation from the Regional Housing Council. I think that's probably the next step that needs to happen is the Regional Housing Council needs to send this recommendation for committing the regional funds 1406 to all the cities, and then having an affirmative concurrence from the jurisdictions. And then at that point is the commitment is done.
I'm looking fast here because I don't remember that part of the interlocal. I know that we added the 1406 money into the RHC interlocal agreement, but I'm and quite possibly just forgetting that we had a mechanism to have affirmment by each jurisdiction.
Either way, our action is the same.
Right,
Right.
that's true. Good point. And then the county staff would do the next step if it's required by the. Does that make sense, Romero? By the interlocal?
Well, but the interlocal, I believe, I don't have it in front of me, but it's a recommendation from the Regional Housing Council on a project. This is a project, and each of the representatives from the jurisdiction will take that recommendation for this project and work through individual legislative bodies. That's how I understand.
So our step is to pass a recommendation via resolution, and then to circle back with our respective jurisdictions to memorialize that in the form of a resolution at the city level.
That is correct.
Yes, and I'll just I was not questioning you, Romero, and you're totally right. So I'm just pulling up the language that says that with respect to 1406, jurisdictions commit to a regional project using this funding. But further, the BOCC will not approve any project until and unless each legislative body has taken action to endorse the RHC recommendation. So then you're right. So Michael, that means each of us takes it back to our body, and then our body forwards a recommendation to Ty and Romero, correct? Okay. Everybody okay with that process?
Yeah, that is correct. And I will encourage each jurisdiction to actually put the dollar amount. I know there's some 2020.
Oh, if what we can bring into that. Okay, that's good.
Yeah,
Okay.
so please be specific on the legislative bodies that will recommend to the Board of County Commissioners the specific amount. And then we'll have a global conversation whether we meet the 1.7 million.
Okay. Scott, and then I have a question for Carrie.
So I'm looking at Romero, just for rough math, I think you identified it would take 2 years worth of the combined 1406. So would it be appropriate if RHC actually made a motion to commit 2 years worth of 1406 of their individual jurisdictions funding? And hopefully we would get there with that 1.7. We'd be close.
Yeah, I would just like to see how much we have left in the last round of allocations first, because it seems to me like that's the first money to use, and then along with this year, and see what the gap still is. So,
yeah, the reason I bring that up is just to get clarity of what the jurisdiction is going to bring back to the legislative body. So are we asking for 2 years worth or 1 year's worth?
Yeah, and that was the point of my previous comment is a 2 year worth of regional allocation. So even if there is opportunities to reduce that because of some remaining 2020 dollars, but it's still the 2 years. We may not use the entire 2 years, but at least the commitment is there.
Okay. That's good. So yeah, so the jurisdictions would affirm the recommendation and commit that they're willing to put up to 2 years, but also like to see other funding considered. Okay, perfect. Carrie, can you, after this motion dispenses, can you kind of write something and send it to us all to make sure we take the right thing back to our committees, since Keely and Tom aren't here?
Yes.
Okay, hang on, I have to close the door real quick. I know I have a motion on the floor. Carrie, just one other question about timeline. Is the RHC recommendation kind of good enough for Lehigh to keep moving forward in applications? How fast do cities need to jump?
I think, obviously, yeah, I think that what will be especially helpful for the project is if they have a conditional award letter prior to their Housing Trust Fund application, September 15. So having a conditional award letter that expresses tonight's decision, I think would be very helpful for them in their application.
Romero, would it be possible to do a conditional award letter that's conditional on the BOCC's approval after the jurisdiction's recommendation? So
We don't meet again until September 7th,
Right.
I think.
Yeah,
Is
we
our
don't,
next
I
meeting.
think our next business meeting is the 14th.
Yeah, I'll probably work with Carrie and Tom to see what we can
Okay.
on those terms.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so
Take-
any
just take
further?
the summer off or something?
What?
Oh, we have study sessions and Labor Day, so.
We have a 2-week recess, the tail end of August.
Any further discussion?
So I know that I'm speaking from the county, and I don't want to be disrespectful with Commissioner Mejia if she wants to add anything.
Carolina?
Go
any-
ahead, Mira. No, I have no comments.
Okay, everybody on the same page? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, so we've made a recommendation for like really the only pot of money we have under our purview directly. So nice work, everyone. That was a great conversation, and we'll see where it goes. Stephen, thank you for the work that Lehi's doing, and we really appreciate you being a player in our community and helping us with this gigantic problem. So.
No, thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to tour through the phase 1 building, it's pretty close to completion now. So we're happy to take anybody through to check it out. And we're sorry, we were hoping that we would have a big event that was befitting of the completion of that building, but it's looking like we probably won't be able to, but we're still happy to take folks through it and show folks around.
Great. And should we contact you or Meg?
Yeah, either works.
Okay, cool. Great.
Thank you all so much.
And if you have a piece of property, Lehi is like planning all of their next projects. So, you know, give them a call and they'd be happy to build one for you too, probably. So with that, I will take it to the next item, which is the technical team working group updates. And I think I'm going to Carrie, but I know Keith has something for us as well.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Chair Cooper. I think the primary, the big technical team update is from Keith, our siting team chair tonight.
Thanks, Carrie. I'm going to share my screen real quickly here, and we'll go from there. Everybody seeing my screen?
Yep.
There you go.
All right. So thanks everybody for engaging in this conversation. As you know, we have been madly searching for a piece of property to operate a safe parking program on and ultimately transition into a supportive housing facility. We are in the process at the city of acquiring the Quality Inn property, the hotel that burned in downtown Olympia. But that property is going to be used for relocating our mitigation site out of the heart of downtown. So that space is claimed and likely to be used. This 5.8 acre parcel came to our attention and would seem to be a good fit for a short term for a safe parking program and longer term for a supportive housing facility. As you can see here, this is the property in question. It is again about almost a 6 acre parcel in total. It's currently owned by the Kauffman Foundation and they are liquidating their assets in the community now. The Stoll Road area is an area that is in rapid transition. There now is a multifamily project constructed on this property, and there's also, of course, Merritt Manor fronting out on Martin Way. So this area is definitely in transition. My ask of the Regional Housing Council today is to support the county, the city, and the Regional Housing Council technical team working on this project, developing a funding scenario and coming back to you for a specific recommendation regarding supporting this project. I have submitted a letter of interest to the owners and they have accepted that letter of interest. And that would put us in a position to move forward towards a purchase and sale agreement at some point in the future. The city is not in a position to carry this project by ourselves. We're, far from it. We're stretched with our current commitments at Plum Street Village and at the mitigation site. So we would definitely need the support of the county and the Regional Housing Council to make this project work. But again, we feel like that this property could serve multiple needs, both short-term and long-term. Short-term, we continue to have nearly 70 people camped along Ensign Road. Just recently, Intercity Transit has rerouted their buses off of Ensign Road. The hospital continues to register complaints with the city about access to the emergency room. Our local EMS transport services are often rerouting off of Ensign Road. So there continues to be conflicts both with traffic and with pedestrians and also with environmental concerns. So long-term, Ensign Road is not a suitable location for people to live. We feel like this would be a better option to explore. But again, I'm looking for Regional Housing Council support to move this forward and continue that conversation and continuing to explore funding options with the county and the Regional Housing Council. So Ramiro, would you like to add anything to that?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Keith. From the county's point of view, I think this is a fantastic opportunity for the Regional Housing Council to see this as an investment. And we have been looking from even at the Regional Housing Council, some of the ARP funds to start building infrastructure or purchasing infrastructure. As Keith stated, I believe this is going to help two purposes. One, the immediate need to resolve the Ensign Road issue, but also it will be an asset for the region to have a long-term transitional housing in the larger project. And what it comes to mind, is bonding the $1406 in the long term. They can really have a signature project that will bring value to the community. So I believe this is a great opportunity for the Regional Housing Council to endorse it. And again, a two-step process addresses the immediate need and provides an opportunity to build an asset for the future.
And I'll just add, sort of half serious, half flip. It also appears to get 3 or 4 septic systems out of the community, which is good for everyone.
That is true. I'm going to stop my share and so we can see each other for discussion.
Okay. Questions, comments? Michael?
So what's being asked of us, just to put a point on it, is to direct staff and the technical team to go develop a potential funding model for acquiring that parcel and for developing it into a safe parking alternative. Is that an accurate understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
That sounds like a great motion, Michael.
Do we need a formal one? I only have one screen and I can't have my agenda up in front of me while also utilizing the one screen. Is there something more formal written in the agenda
there's
other
not.
than that?
So that's
okay.
What we need is what you just said, but let me just go through and see what other questions there are and then we'll come back around to that, okay? Scott?
So just quickly on this property obviously you need to develop a funding plan, but has there been any discussion? Has there been an environmental review? Is there any other things about this property that would be a concern?
Yes, Scott, that would definitely be part of the purchase and sale agreement, would be doing a phase 1 environmental review, doing an appraisal for the property. They have listed the property for a specific purchase price. Of course, we can only pay what the property is appraised for. So we need to do that as well. So yeah, there's definitely some due diligence that needs to take place. And my suggestion is that we move forward towards being able to do that due diligence by developing a funding plan and seeing if this is feasible for the region to take this project on.
Good question.
Thanks.
Other
With
questions?
the environmental review, if there were to be a problem detected on that land, Would the owners, do you think, be willing to negotiate a cleanup, or?
I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it. My hope is that there are no environmental concerns, but there is a gas station next door, and the area has been used for many years for a variety of different purposes. So that's why we do a phase one, is to discover what the historic use of the property has been, and then determine whether or not a phase two is advisable.
Okay.
And any purchase and sale agreement would have that sort of in the feasibility period, that we would be able to back out if we found anything that was overwhelming, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good. Romero, do you have your hand up again, or is that the same?
No, it's a different one.
Go ahead.
I will, the next meeting, the RHC is scheduled is in sometime in September, I believe. And in this particular case, is any real estate transaction timing is of the essence. So if the direction of the RHC is for the technical group to come up with a financial plan for this, I don't think we can afford to wait until the next meeting until the RHC can have this conversation again, because I think the idea is to have the endorsement of the financial plan by the RHC as soon as feasible, so we can enter into this purchase and sale agreement, and we can go through the process of the feasibility study, phase one, environmental assessment, as well as the appraisal. So it could be a possibility for the siting team to come up as soon as feasible, and this conversation through the RHC can be done via email.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, Romero. I would also say, I think you could probably write a purchase and sale that was contingent on our funding matrix being approved, and maybe get going on a purchase and sale agreement even before we talk again. But I don't know if people have the tolerance for that, but it seems like that's possible, right, Keith?
Sure, of course it's possible. Whether or not the committee would be comfortable with that or not, it's another question. But yeah, it's definitely possible.
I think in the interest of transparency, we probably ought to call a special meeting, even if it's just a one topic agenda, and do a vote on it.
Yeah, I have a tendency to agree. I think that for something like that, I would definitely want to just make sure I'm able to check in with the mayor. And I mean, it's depending on what the funding structure looks like, of course, but yeah, I think a special meeting would probably be warranted.
Well, I guess the other thought I have is, if any one jurisdiction felt comfortable enough with the possibilities, they could move forward on securing a purchase and sale agreement outside of any RHC conversation.
Nice try, Jim.
Okay, so then it sounds like where we're at is that we would take a motion to support the technical team moving forward on trying to pull this project together and bring us back a proposal either as a special meeting or at our September meeting, whichever comes sooner. Is that the motion?
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Could I ask a question though? How much time do you think staff and technical team will need to actually come up with this and with a funding matrix on how we pay for this?
Keith?
Depends on availability. I would definitely like to sit down with Romero and Jay and somebody from probably Tom and Carrie at a minimum to have this conversation. So let me see what we can get together. I would think 2 weeks would be great, at least to start the conversation and to explore at least preliminarily whether it's feasible. And then we can decide whether or not we wait until the 15th, the next RHC meeting, or we schedule a special meeting. But
Okay. That makes sense.
I think this just allows us to have the conversation, and we're having it with the full knowledge of the committee and with the committee's report or the council's report. So, you know, that's what I was hoping for this evening, was just to get your acquiescence that, yes, this is how we're moving forward, and that you won't be surprised when we come back in the future and say, hey, we found a path forward on this.
Okay. JW?
Yeah, I'm just curious, how interested is the Kauffman Foundation in supporting the Regional Housing Council and these efforts toward gaining these properties?
They have a sale price on the property, and they're interested in achieving their desired sale price. So I don't think there's any intention to donate anything or anything like that.
No, I didn't expect them to donate, but to be able to work with a timeline that might be different than what would be out in the commercial market.
That's a really good question, Mayor Foster. And the reality is, when I submitted the letter of interest to them, just the notion that they're dealing with the city gives them, and you know, the county and the other jurisdictions here, gives them some comfort knowing that, you know, we're not going to have to go to the bank and get a loan for this and qualify for it. And, you know, if we make a decision to move forward with this, we're going to be able to fund it, and we're going to be able to move forward, and we're going to be able to close. So I think that how we structure the purchase and sale agreement will give us the flexibility we need to make this project work. It may cost us some money, you know, as you extend out the time for due diligence. It may cost us some money to go another, you know, we may want to build in an opportunity to extend the purchase and sale agreement for another 60 days for $25,000, for example, to allow us to do that due diligence. And that, you know, that's not uncommon. So
good question, though. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so we have a motion to keep the technical team moving forward and maybe have a meeting in between meetings if we need it. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Keith. And then Keith, I just, I'm not sure if Tom talked to you yet, but last Friday in the meeting for planning for this, we were talking about the GIS work that had been done, and went back to each community to analyze what properties in their jurisdictions might fit for regional projects. And we're just wondering if there's a report coming back from each community to the technical team, so we can kind of sew up that conversation and what the, you know, top 10 properties is, or whatever that looks like for out of those 200 and some you mentioned before.
we'll have to take that up with the tech team.
Okay.
I'm not
I
sure
think the public would like to see the RHC hear back from the jurisdictions is my where I'm at on that.
All right. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, anything else from the technical team? Okay, good stuff. Doing regional projects. That's what we're supposed to be about. So that's cool. So good of the order. I will just tell you, I heard back from Keeley, even on vacation, that they're going to the county commission on the 31st with the planning around permanent supportive housing. Is there anything else for the good of the order? I see that we have our public health director on, and given that we're in the middle of emergency, Shelley, anything that you want to tell us or ask of us?
Hi, everyone. No, not specifically, just, we're very concerned right now about the continued growing cases and the prevalence of Delta. We've got over 14,000 confirmed cases in Thurston County, and our test positivity rate is above 10%. We have the most cases ever in the pandemic over the last few weeks. Our hospital capacity is extremely stressed. At full capacity, more COVID patients this morning than there ever has been in the pandemic at our Thurston County hospitals inpatient. In terms of our houseless community, we continue to be concerned about this population and are working to make sure we have enough Q&I, quarantine and isolation facility space should there be further outbreaks, trying to increase our vaccination rates amongst our vulnerable populations. We're working hard to plan for the next phase of mass vaccinations. When boosters become available, third doses for immune compromised are available now. And so a lot going on, really, really busy times and lots of outbreaks in the community. So, but it's our top priority to protect our vulnerable population. We want to keep them out of the emergency departments, out of the hospital, and do everything that we can to support all of our housing and shelter providers as well. So if any of you need anything from me or our health officer, Dr. Abdamalik, or we can support any of you, please let us know.
Thank you, Shelley, and huge shout out to your team. You're doing some phenomenal work, and every time you think you're going to get a break, it gets bigger. So thank you for taking care of our community. JW?
Can I ask Shelley a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Tag on. Shelley, what's been interesting to me is to see if any of our outdoor events in Thurston County have contributed to this uptick. Is there a way that you're dealing with hospitalized patients to do some contact tracing and historically find out where they've been and where they might have picked this up?
Yes, our team investigates every case that we get in Thurston County. They're really slammed. Today we had over 100 more new cases. So doing our best to stay on top of all of that. But yes, we investigate every case and try to figure out where people are getting sick. When we talk about that test positivity rate of being above 10%, nearly 11% right now, that is an indicator for us that there's a lot of community transmission from places that people don't know where they got sick.
Right.
And so that's, we know that, close contact, household members, all that, in the workplace, those are all areas where people get sick. But because Delta is a pretty vicious variant here of COVID-19 that we're still learning about, we're just seeing it's much more transmissible in crowded spaces. So I know I've been asked by a lot of people, and we're working on trying to get some guidance out regarding gatherings and events, whether that's things like, weddings or parties, or whether that's festivals or conferences or meetings. I know people are trying to make decisions about what they should do, but we want to encourage everybody to use a lot of caution right now, because it is happening in those type of settings.
So get vaccinated, wear a mask, stay distanced, stay home if you can.
Yep, you got it.
JW, did you have more?
No, that was all. That was it. Thank you.
Oh, and I'll add one I read this week. If you have an unvaccinated family member, act like you're not vaccinated.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah. And I'll just throw out that in Oregon, the governor is doing a mask mandate for outdoor events, I read today. And in Honolulu, the mayor is limiting group size indoor and outdoor again. So I think those recommendations that Shelley's working on, I think we all just got to pay attention and see what comes next, because there might be some more changes for our community. Thank you, Shelley. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, good work today, everyone. Those are two, we kind of moved on two big things. So I pat yourself on the back, and please do your best to bring back the recommendations to the jurisdictions, from the jurisdictions to the county on phase 2. And let me know if Carolina or I need to try to join one of your meetings and tell the story. So thank you. We're adjourned.
All right.